today, I'm going to read some stories from the Aesop for children. This book is in the public domain. If you enjoy these stories, please subscribe and come back again. I hope you like them. There was once a baby goat whose growing horns made him think he was a grown-up billy goat and able to take care of himself. So one evening when the flock started home from the pasture and his mother called, the baby goat paid no heed and kept right on nibbling the tender grass. A little later when he lifted his head, everybody was gone. He was all alone. The sun was sinking. Long shadows came creeping over the ground. A chilly little wind came creeping with them, making scary noises in the grass. The baby goat shivered as he thought of the terrible wolf. Then he ran wildly over the field, bleating for his mother. But not halfway, near a clump of trees, there was the wolf. The baby goat knew there was little hope for him. "Please, Mr. Wolf," he said trembling, "I know you are going to eat me. But first please play me a tune, for I want to dance and be merry as long as I can." The wolf liked the idea of a little music before eating, so he struck up a merry tune and the baby goat leaped and frisked gaily. Meanwhile, the flock was moving slowly homeward. In the still evening air the wolf's music carried far. The shepherd dogs pricked up their ears. They recognized the song the wolf sings before a feast, and in a moment they were racing back to the pasture. The wolf's song ended suddenly, and as he ran, with the dogs at his heels, he called himself a fool for playing music to please the baby goat, when he should have concentrated on getting his next meal. The moral of this story, according to my grandma, is: stay focused, no matter the distractions. The tortoise, carries his house on his back. No matter how hard he tries, he cannot leave home. They say that Jupiter punished him so, because he was such a lazy stay-at-home that he would not go to Jupiter's wedding, even when especially invited. After many years, Tortoise began to wish he had gone to that wedding. When he saw how happily the birds flew about and how the rabbit and the chipmunk and all the other animals ran nimbly by, always eager to see everything there was to be seen, the tortoise felt very sad and discontented. He wanted to see the world too, and there he was with a house on his back and little short legs that could hardly drag him along. One day he met a pair of ducks and told them all his trouble. "We can help you to see the world," said the ducks. "Take hold of this stick with your teeth and we will carry you far up in the air where you can see the whole countryside. But keep quiet or you will be sorry." The tortoise was very glad indeed. He seized the stick firmly with his teeth, the two ducks took hold of it, one at each end, and away they sailed up toward the clouds. Just then a crow flew by. He was very much astonished at the strange sight and cried, "This must surely be the king of tortoises." "Why certainly," began the tortoise. But as he opened his mouth to say these foolish words he lost his hold on the stick, and down he fell to the ground, where he was dashed to pieces on a rock. The moral of this story, according to my grandma, is: pride and reckless curiosity can cause lots of trouble. "Why in the world do you walk sideways like that?" said Mommy Crab to her son. "You should always walk straight forward with your toes turned out." "Show me how to walk, Mommy," answered the little crab obediently, "I want to learn." So the old Mommy Crab tried and tried to walk straight forward. But she could walk sideways only, like her son. And when she wanted to turn her toes out she tripped and fell on her nose. The moral of this story, according to my grandma, is: don't tell others how to act unless you can set a good example. An ox came down to a reedy pool to drink. As he splashed heavily into the water, he crushed a young frog into the mud. The old frog soon missed the little one and asked his brothers and sisters what had happened to him. "A great big monster," said one of them, "stepped on little brother with one of his huge feet." "Big, was he?" said the old frog, puffing herself up. Was he as big as this? Oh, much bigger, they cried. The frog puffed up still more. He could not have been bigger than this, she said. But the little frogs all declared that the monster was much, much bigger, and the old frog kept puffing herself out more and more until, all at once, she popped like a balloon. The moral of this story, according to my grandma, is, don't try to do what's impossible. The name of the next story is a dog, a rooster, and a fox. And it goes like this. A dog and a rooster, who were the best of friends, wished very much to see something of the world. So they decided to leave the farmyard and to set out into the world along the road that led to the woods. The two friends traveled along in the very best of spirits and without having any adventure to speak of. At nightfall the rooster, looking for a place to sleep, saw nearby a hollow tree that he thought would do very nicely for a night's lodging. The dog could creep inside and the rooster would fly up on one of the branches. So said, so done, and both slept very comfortably. With the first glimmer of dawn the rooster awoke. For the moment he forgot just where he was. He thought he was still in the farmyard where it had been his duty to arouse the household at daybreak. So standing on tiptoes he flapped his wings and crowed loudly. But instead of waking up the farmer, he woke up a fox nearby in the woods. The fox immediately had rosy visions of a very delicious breakfast. Hurrying to the tree where the rooster was roosting, he said very politely, "A hearty welcome to our woods, honored sir. I cannot tell you how glad I am to see you here. I am quite sure we shall become the closest of friends." "I feel highly flattered, kind sir," replied the rooster slyly. "If you will please go around to the door of my house at the foot of the tree, my porter will let you in." The hungry but unsuspecting fox went around the tree as he was told, and in a twinkling the dog had seized him. The moral of this story, according to my grandma, is, those who try to trick others just might get tricked themselves. She also says what goes around, comes around. The name of the next story is Putting a Bell on the Cat. And it goes like this. The mice once called a meeting to decide on a plan to free themselves of their enemy, the cat. At the very least they wished to find some way of knowing when she was coming, so they might have time to run away. Indeed, something had to be done, for they lived in such constant fear of her claws that they hardly dared stir from their little homes by night or day. Many plans were discussed, but none of them was good enough. At last a very young mouse got up and said, "I have a plan that seems very simple, but I know it will be successful. All we have to do is to hang a bell around the cat's neck. When we hear the bell ringing we will know immediately that our enemy is coming." All the mice were very surprised that they had not thought of such a plan before. But in the middle of the rejoicing over their good fortune, an old mouse stood up and said, "I will say that the plan of the young mouse is very good. But let me ask you one question, who will put the bell on the cat?" And the moral of this story, according to my grandma, is, saying something's gotta be done is one thing, but walking the walk, that's the hard part, baby girl. The name of the next story is The Eagle and the Jackdaw. It goes like this. An eagle, swooping down on powerful wings, seized a baby sheep in her claws and flew off with it to her nest. A jackdaw saw her do this, and his silly head was filled with the idea that he was big and strong enough to do as the eagle had done. So with much rustling of feathers and a fierce attitude, he came down swiftly on the back of a large daddy sheep. But when he tried to fly away he found that he couldn't because his claws were tangled in the wool. And as if that were not bad enough, the ram hardly noticed he was there. The shepherd saw the tangled-up jackdaw and at once guessed what had happened. Running up, he caught the bird and clipped its wings. That evening he gave the jackdaw to his children. "What a funny bird this is," they said laughing. "What do you call it, father?" "That is a jackdaw, my children. But if you should ask him, he would say he is an eagle." And the moral of this story, according to my grandma, is: stay humble, know your limits, and focus on what you can actually do. The name of the next story is The Little Boy and the Walnuts. It goes like this. A boy was given permission to put his hand into a pitcher to get some walnuts. But he took such a great fistful that he could not draw his hand out again. There he stood, unwilling to give up a single walnut and yet unable to get them all out at once. Angry and disappointed, he started to cry. "My son," said his mother, "be satisfied with half the nuts you have taken and you will easily get your hand out. Then perhaps you may have some more walnuts some other time." And the moral of this story, according to my grandma, is: trying to get everything at once might leave you with nothing at all. The name of the next story is Hercules and the Farmer. It goes like this. A farmer was driving his wagon along a muddy country road after a heavy rain. The horses could hardly drag the load through the deep mud, and at last they came to a standstill when one of the wheels sank to the hub in a deep rut. The farmer climbed down from his seat and stood beside the wagon looking at it, but without making the least effort to get it out of the rut. All he did was to curse his bad luck and call loudly on Hercules to come to his aid. Then, they said, Hercules really did appear and told the man, "Hey you! Put your shoulder to the wheel, and help your horses. Do you think you can move the wagon by just looking at it and whining about it? Hercules will not help unless you make some effort to help yourself." And when the farmer put his shoulder to the wheel and urged on the horses, the wagon moved very readily, and soon the farmer was riding along very happily and with a good lesson learned. And the moral to this story, according to my grandma, is: heaven helps those who help themselves. The name of the next story is The Kid and the Wolf. In this story, a kid is what they call a baby goat. The story goes like this. A frisky and playful young kid had been left by the herdsman on the thatched roof of a sheep shelter to keep him out of trouble. The baby goat was goofing off near the edge of the roof when he saw a wolf and began to make fun of him. He was making faces and talking trash and generally just being a pest. "I hear you," said the wolf, "and I haven't the least grudge against you for what you say or do. When you are up there, it is the roof that's talking, not you." And the moral to this story, according to my grandma, is: don't say anything that you might regret later. If you enjoyed listening to my stories, won't you please come back again? And I'd really like it so much if you would subscribe.